Round 8 of the 2024 Motul FIM Superbike World Championship is the 27th staging of the Motul French round. You join us live from the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours, located in the département of Nièvre, a 3-hour drive to Paris, or possibly longer by the time we hit the Périphérique at the end of a busy day today. Originally built in 1960 as a short circuit just 2 kilometres in length, the modern-day layout has its genesis in the 1970s redesign, and it became a Grand Prix venue in 1991 when World SBK also made its first visit. These days ours is the premier class at this venue. A stop-start layout characterised by heavy braking with the shortest start-finish straight of the season and a relatively high-speed corner at turn 1. Instead, the first long braking zone is the Adelaide hairpin, where Toprak Razgatlioglu passed Michael Rinaldi for the lead of race 1 last year, a 239-metre stopping distance from the speed trap down to the slowest corner on the circuit. Heavy braking too into turns 6 and 11, also named after former World SBK venues, the Nürburgring and Imola, but the next best opportunity to pass is on the exit of Imola into the tight turn 13, taken at just 60 kilometres per hour. Finally, the run to turn 15 lengthened in 2003 to create a new passing opportunity, 180 metres now on the brakes into the Lycée complex that also comprises the final chicane. The last 3 Superbike World Champions, the men who've won the last 9 world titles and all but 7 of the last 95 races between them, are all ruled out of race 2 of the 2024 Motul French round. Toprak Razgatlioglu was the first domino to fall on Friday. We lost Jonathan Rea on Saturday, and now Alvaro Bautista is out on Sunday with a fractured rib. This morning it was Bautista's teammate Nicolo Bulliger who took the win, thanks to a stout defence against 3 strong attempts at a race-winning pass from Alex Lowes, but his first win since the season opener in Phillip Island was in the Superpole race. And Steve English alongside me, there are much bigger points on offer in race 2 this afternoon.
Yeah, in race 2 this afternoon it'll be over 21 laps, and given that we've had spots of rain in the last hour, I think it's fair to say that all of the Superbike riders, mechanics and crew chiefs are all keeping their eyes on the skies, because the last thing they want is uncertainty right now. They need to make sure that you got all your boxes covered. That was the story of yesterday's race. Hopefully we're able to have a clear run all the way through this one, because the Superpole race was a really interesting battle.
Yes, the whole of yesterday was about weather, but over 10 laps earlier on today, it was Nicolo Bulliger victorious against Alex Lowes. As I said, Lowes making a few attempts at an overtaking manoeuvre, but ultimately not quite able to get there. So, strong defence from Nicolo Bulliger, your race winner. Danilo Petrucci forced his way through from 9th to 3rd to complete the podium positions. Made contact with Andrea Locatelli at one stage. Locatelli, the second of our retirements, but no further action taken against Danilo Petrucci, who keeps his podium by 0.2 of a second over Scott Redding at the line. Strong weekend for BMW, despite the absence of Toprak Razgatlioglu, and strong weekend as well for Honda. Xavi Vierge coming home in P5 and Iker Lecuona in P7.
It's been a really good weekend for Honda, and not just because of their race performances. Xavi Vierge qualifying up on the second row of the grid in the Superpole session showed that he's been fast all the way through this weekend. That bike's working well around here, and they're going to have another opportunity in this race to try and come away with decent points. If they can be in the top 10, I think they've done a good job.
Nicolo Bulliger outscored by Toprak Razgatlioglu in every round other than the Australian round at the start of this season. Came into this weekend 92 points down compared to Toprak Razgatlioglu, but there was an opportunity to pick up 62 points with Toprak ruled out injured on Friday. A fall in race 1 yesterday was a missed opportunity by Bulliger. He didn't make the same mistake twice, coming away with the race victory in the Superpole race earlier on today.
Yeah, a really good performance by Bulliger in that race. Kept a cool head when he was up against Alex Lowes for that race victory, and certainly for Bulliger, really important to do that, just because in terms of the championship battle, he is Toprak's closest rival. Bautista out of action for this race means that all eggs are now in with Bulliger for Ducati. 80 points of the deficit, 25 points for a race win. needs the opportunity to claw back as many points as possible when Razgadi Oglu's on the sidelines.
Pit lane open for 5 minutes. Riders making their way out onto the circuit ahead of the 21-lap distance this afternoon. This is Scott Redding, 2 fourth places for Redding. He'll feel that he's on the verge of getting back onto the podium. Showed real frustration as he crossed the line behind Danilo Petrucci earlier on.
Yeah, and I think for Redding, 2 to 4th place finishes. Front row of the grid in the Super Pole session has been a very good weekend. Just, I think, as people expected in Magny-Cours, this will be one of his stronger weekends. But I think he's outperformed those expectations. But good weekend for BMW all in, with Michael van der Mark obviously winning yesterday's race, qualifying 3rd, 4th and 5th in the Super Pole session, and 2 4th place finishes for Redding. So it's been good for BMW in terms of what that bike has been able to do on track.
We are without 2 of the top 5 in your championship standings. So your favourites, Bulliger 2nd overall, Lowe's 4th overall, and Petrucci, who currently sits in 5th. And you wouldn't be surprised if those were the 3 on the podium. They are the 3 that start on the front row of the grid here. Nicolo Bulliger making his way out onto the circuit from pole position. Let's take a look at your rider lineup. Three of those riders missing for race 2 of the Motul French round. Injuries for Toprak Razgatlioglu on Friday, on Saturday for Jonathan Ray, and for Alvaro Bautista after the Super Pole race earlier on. But 3 of your top 5 in the championship are on the front row of the grid. The big news and movers and shakers after the Super Pole session, Super Pole race earlier on. Iker Lecuona climbs from P19 to P7. He was outside of the 105% time in Super Pole in wet conditions yesterday, but he's been much stronger in races, so a big climb from him. Danilo Petrucci from P10 in Super Pole to P3 in the Super Pole race, at the expense of Andrea Locatelli, who crashed out at turn 5 after the pair made contact. Locatelli drops back from P9 to P11. Remy Gardner crucially coming through from P13 to P9, passing Axel Bassani, who therefore drops from 7th to 10th. The BMWs all losing places. Scott Redding from 3rd to 4th, dropping off the front row. Garrett Gerloff from 4th to 6th, and Michael van der Mark from 5th to 8th.
Yeah, and for van der Mark, that 8th position, the middle of the 3rd row, is still going to be a factor during the course of this race. But the battle in the closing stages of the Super Pole race this morning went all the way down the order, and van der Mark just got shuffled out on that last lap, but he'll certainly think over 21 laps he's got a good chance in this one to be able to come away with another top 5 finish. It does look really close in that second group here at Magny-Cours this weekend.
Yamaha's rather struggling. The BMWs and also the Hondas really have leapt in front of them for this weekend at least.
Yamaha are struggling a little bit, but when you take Toprak out of the equation, when you take Alvaro Bautista out of the equation, even Jonathan Ray out of it, there's 3 of the front-running riders that always end up contending at the front over the recent years in World SBK. So it means that there are opportunities for the riders to step up and make a bit of a mark. And certainly podium spots are on offer today that wouldn't be on offer for a lot of other riders in the past.
Heading our way then up the order and towards the front of the grid, Nicolo Bulliger climbs from 2nd place after the Super Pole session to victory in the Super Pole race this morning to take top step on the grid away from Alex Lowe's here. Bulliger retired from race 1 yesterday. In the context of the championship, he's the man who matters this afternoon. Yeah,
a win now in this race puts him 55 points down on Toprak, and 4 rounds left. It's a question mark whether or not Toprak will be back for Cremona as well, so critical for Bulliger to win this morning Super Pole race, and now he needs to double down on that and make sure he wins race 2.
Alongside Nicolo Bulliger then, second on the grid will be Alex Lowe's, who qualified in pole position for the first time since 2018 in Assen, when he came away with top spot yesterday. Has been coming for him. He's been strong in Super Pole in recent rounds, a strong performer in the Super Pole race as well. 3rd consecutive Super Pole race podium for Lowe's. It was 2nd position this morning after he retired with a crash on lap 15 in race 1 yesterday.
Yeah, he's had an excellent season, Lowe's, and this morning morning was the continuation of that. Tried as he could to take the race victory, tried to make the moves in a few different places in the last couple of laps, just ran out of grip in that closing stages of the race, trying to overtake for the race lead, and ended up having to settle for second position. But a really combative performance this morning.
Lowe's 21 points behind Alvaro Bautista in the championship. Bautista not lining up this afternoon, so a win for Lowe's would move him into the bronze medal position for 2024. Second row of the grid here with Scott Redding, Xavi Vierge and Garrett Gerloff. This looks like a decidedly more contented Scott Redding this weekend. Third place in the Superpole session yesterday. 2 fourth place finishes, matching the best of his results from this season at Donington Park.
Yeah, I think it's been a really good weekend for Redding, and obviously in the past we've seen Magny as one of his stronger tracks, whether it was with Ducati or BMW, and it's good to see him up there with those 2 top 4 finishes. Like you said, the best we've seen of him since Donington. And hopefully for Redding's sake, he's able to come away with another top 5 finish in this race. 3 top 5s would be a really good weekend for him with that front row start.
Niccolo Bulliger, heavy fall for him in race 1. Looks like he might be wearing a bit of strapping as well. Had a big impact on his shoulder after that crash. Jonathan Rea also involved in that spill, and he likewise is out, unfortunately, this afternoon. So fingers crossed for a speedy recovery for all 3 of our injured men: Toprak Razgatlioglu, Jonathan Rea and Alvaro Bautista.
Yeah, and those 3 riders out of action, and hopefully we're able to see them back next time out in Cremona. But the rib fracture for Bautista, that could take a little bit of time to heal for him, and obviously Toprak's injuries as well. We have to wait and see the extent of those.
Continuing on with the second row of the grid, alongside Scott Redding, we've got Xavi Vierge and Garrett Gerloff. We've said it already, but best we've seen from Honda for some time, really. Best we've seen from Xavi Vierge since his podium in Indonesia last season. A 7th place finish in race 1, even despite a pit intervention time penalty, and then 5th place in the Superpole race. So he's in the middle of the second row. Garrett Gerloff completes that second row. He was only 12th in the end in race 1, but crashed out of the lead. All sorts of drama with tyre choice for him, and then later a penalty relegating him out of the top 10. But he's been on the pace throughout the weekend and claimed a 6th position finish in the Superpole race earlier on. Third row of the grid for Iker Lecuona, Michael van der Mark and Remy Gardner. Lecuona's had to fight his way through the field in the 2 races so far. Qualified, well, didn't qualify. P19 he started on the grid, came through for 6th position in race 1 and 7th place in the Superpole race. So Lecuona in a strong vein of form this weekend.
Yeah, and it's been a really good weekend for both Honda riders, so hopefully for them they're able to come away with decent points-paying finishes now in race 2 as well.
This is the 2024 Motul French round. It's time for La Marseillaise, the French national anthem. Over 50,000 fans in attendance this weekend at the Motul French round, and soaking up all of the atmosphere on the grid is Kiko Giles.
Thank you, Alex. Down here on the grid, 4th place for Scott Redding. Been saying a lot of that this weekend. Scott, the hard way yesterday, a fighting way today. You deserve a podium in race 2, don't you?
Oh man, I'll be doing my best, that's for sure. Obviously yesterday was crazy conditions, so I was happy to come away with the result, even though I crashed mid-race. But you know, still happy, I had fun. The Superpole race, again, I was a bit timid on that first lap. Probably did me some help with the tyre for later on in the race. And I was battling pretty hard, but I just knew if I couldn't defend the hairpin, I would have struggled to pass Danilo, as I was thinking that he was alongside me. So that was the end of that. Now we have a long race, obviously different tyres, so let's see what we can do. Just try and be consistent and just try and fight a bit harder in the beginning.
Enjoy. Good forward. Look forward to seeing it.
Thank you.
Danilo Petrucci, we saw there lining up in third position on the grid. He's fought his way through from 10th and 9th respectively to third position in race 1 in wet conditions and the Superpole race earlier on today. We've said time and time again, it's difficult to win a race in World SBK. He hasn't been able to do so, with Ray, Razgatlioglu and Bautista dominating. None of those three in play this afternoon. This is the best opportunity Petrucci has had.
100%. This is a chance for him. Front row of the grid. He's had a good weekend up to this point. Podium in yesterday's race and in the drive for the Superpole race. Good opportunity.
Let's get back to the third row of the grid then, with Iker Lecuona, Michael van der Mark and Remy Gardner. Van der Mark, your race 1 winner. Only 8th position for him in the Superpole race. Might have felt that he could have extracted a little more than that. He gets his opportunity in the longer race this afternoon.
Yeah, and for van der Mark, at least you're still on the third row of the grid. And once you're in a battle in the Superpole race, it is easy to finish outside those top 9 positions and have to come from the 4th or 5th row of the grid. So for van der Mark, it's an opportunity to come away with top 5 finish. If he can do that, he's had a really good weekend.
Michael van der Mark leading the BMW Motorrad scoring alone this weekend in the absence of Toprak Razgatlioglu. And we do wish a speedy recovery, as we've already said, to Toprak. Completing the third row of the grid here is Remy Gardner. Gardner, who originally qualified in 13th position, crashed out on lap 17 of race 1. It feels like most of the field crashed out, actually, in wet conditions yesterday. So he did well to get through on Axel Bassani and claim 9th position. That relegates Bassani down to P10. Alongside him on the 4th row of the grid, Andrea Locatelli and Taz McKenzie. Locatelli here set the fastest lap of race 1 yesterday afternoon. That was as early as lap number 2, eventually came home in 8th position after his own incident.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Locatelli, an incident then in the Superpole race with Petrucci at turn 5, so he's trying to recover from that 4th row of the grid, and he's got an opportunity to be able to come through. Obviously, with the other riders not taking the start today, it also gives you the chance to be able to give yourself an extra few points, but he needs those points. He's dropped down to 6th in the standings behind Petrucci.
Here is the 4th row of the grid then, with Axel Bassani, Andrea Locatelli and Taz McKenzie. Bassani originally qualified in 7th position. He and Andrea Locatelli, the two riders who did lose out on their top 9 spots. And so Bassani lines up in 10th place, and Locatelli only loses 2 places, but down to P11. And here is Andrea Locatelli, retired earlier on, as we've said, 8th position in race 1, holding the flag really for Yamaha in the context of the championship, but the top Yamaha in the championship down to 6th place overall.
Yeah, and for Yamaha it has been a tough season, and it just looks like they're just being left out a little bit behind what everyone else is doing right now. And I think that's been shown by Locatelli in his performances, because he's always been a rider that's been able to get those 4th, 5th, 6th in the championship standings. It just looks harder and harder for him, and it's his consistency, especially at the start of the season in Phillip Island, that's really been the foundation of his season.
Yeah, it's only 15 points ahead now of Michael van der Mark, 23 ahead of Andrea Iannone, so Locatelli could tumble further still. As you say, he's been Mr. Consistency throughout his time in World SBK, so we'll see how he gets on in the remaining quarter of this campaign. Taz McKenzie, strong Superpole in wet conditions yesterday, but hasn't yet delivered points from that place. Retired in race 1, 18th position in the Superpole race. This is a better opportunity for him to try and make use of that grid, mainly because he's ahead of a lot of his rivals for the kind of last of those points-paying positions. He's ahead of Brad Ray, for example, and then you look further back, Rinaldi, Del Bianco, Ertl, those are all the riders that McKenzie's got to try and stay in front of to get points here this afternoon.
Yeah, from the 4th row of the grid, with 3 riders missing, it's an opportunity to score some points, and you try and go with some of the riders that are in front of you in the early stages of the race, the likes of Iannone that you can see here on the grid, or Rinaldi, and you try and just give yourself the opportunity to score some points. Points don't come around too easily in World SBK.
No, 5th row of the grid for Brad Ray, Andrea Iannone and Michael Ruben Rinaldi. Ray, who's only scored 3 points this season, so this is an opportunity for him as well. Iannone, who climbed well through to 5th position, just came through unscathed in that race 1 really to get into the top 5, but he hasn't had much pace in Magny-Cours all weekend. Former podium finisher here at the French round, Michael Ruben Rinaldi, got into the top 10 in race 1, but really was running around at the back of the field. 12th position for him in the Superpole race, so unable to improve his his grid position once again. He completes the 5th row here.
Yeah, it's been a really rough season for Rinaldi, and I think if he's able to salvage something in these final few rounds, it'll at least give him some sign of encouragement. But big question marks about where he's going to be for next season, and maybe even a switch to Moto E on the cards.
That completes the 5th row of the grid. Behind Michael Ruben Rinaldi, Philip Ertl, Alessandro Del Bianco, Sam Lowes, Tito Rabat and Ivo Lopez. A reduced field of 20 riders this afternoon with 21 laps ahead of us.
I'm down here on the grid, Alex, with Serafino Fotti, team principal for the Ducati team. Serafino, before we talk about Nicolo, how is Alvaro? Obviously he's unfit for race 2.
So unfortunately Alvaro did a crash in the Super Pole race and he broke the 8th rib, so was unlucky because it was in the first lap. He started 17th position, but anyway, so this started the race, and unfortunately, but I hope that he get well soon.
And what's the strategy for Nicolo?
Nicolo, the strategy is try to start well, try to push hard, try to keep a small advantage.
Sarah, enjoy the race. And just before I go, guys, on the opening lap, keep an eye on Xavi Vierge. Of recent rounds, he's been very, very quick on the opening lap, so keep an eye on him.
Xavi Vierge, he'll be lining up from the middle of the 2nd row. Had a really good performance in those early laps in the Super Pole race, so we will indeed see how he gets on here. But it is a long race, 21 laps, and I think it's also going to be about managing the pace over that full race distance. Continuing on with the 6th row of the grid, Alessandro Del Bianco, substitute rider for Dominic Egerter at GRT Yamaha this weekend. He'll have been pleased, I think, to come away with points for 10th position yesterday. Be a little bit tougher for him in race 2 this afternoon.
Yeah, but for Del Bianco, decent effort here this weekend as a replacement rider, jumping onto that GRT Yamaha. Might well end up on a Yamaha for the next round as well.
Sam Lowes, who originally qualified in P19, obviously gains a position in the absence of Alvaro Bautista, so up to 18th position now to complete the 6th row of the grid. Sam Lowes, who has failed to score this weekend, crashed out on lap 18 in race 1 yesterday on his return from injury after missing the Portuguese round. And then finally Tito Rabat and Ivo Lopez completing a reduced 20 rider field with 21 laps ahead of us.